Good evening and welcome. Our program will start soon, but it will take a couple of minutes to get everyone on. We at Arundel Women Giving Together are so excited by the number of people who were interested in learning about affordable housing. There are 190 registrants representing both our members and members of the community, including state delegates and community leaders. This evening, our amazing speakers will inform us about what affordable housing is and what is happening with affordable housing in our county. We are hoping this will stimulate our audience, to ask questions. This program will be recorded, but that will take a couple of days to put up on our website. So know you will be able to find that in the near future. We will also tell you some interesting facts about Arundel Women Giving Together that is celebrating its 15th year this year. Good evening and welcome. This year marks our 15th anniversary of investing, informing, and inspiring since our founding in 2006. Arundel Women Giving Together has contributed more than $1.4 million in grants to 42 different nonprofits in Anne Arundel County, working to improve the quality of life for women and their families. This education program on affordable housing is an example of our 15-year commitment to educate our members and the general public about critical issues in our community. Thanks very much to our generous 2021 sponsors who are supporting our work this year: One North Well Services, Sims and Campbell Estates and Trusts, Anne Arundel Dermatology, Sarah Greenlee Morse at Sotheby's International Realty, Chesapeake Medical Imaging, and Doctors Saladine and Begance. My name is Barbara Hofstein, and I am the chair of the Education and Programming Committee. Our committee has brought together three of the leaders of affordable housing in the county and city: Kathy Koch, director of Arundel Community Development Services Incorporated; Teresa Wellman, the Chief of Community Development for the city; and Melissa Maddox Evans, Executive Director, CEO of HACA. I hope you have seen the information about affordable housing on our website, givingtogether.org, under Event Resources. Today's program is a webinar that is being recorded for the future viewing, also under Event Resources. The panelists cannot see the audience, but you will be able to ask them questions by moving your cursor to the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Put your questions there, and our moderator, Ardith Cade, will direct the questions to the panelists. Let me briefly introduce Ardith, who has a stunning history in public service with lots of firsts. As you may have seen on the resource page under the definition of affordable housing and brief history, as Deputy Secretary of the Department of Housing and Community Development under Governors Hughes and Schaefer, Ardith led the successful passage of a key legislation known as the Housing Initiative of 1986 that established Maryland as a national leader in state-funded housing programs. She served on the federal level as president of the Council of State Community Development Officials. Ardith was also a key in launching the Arundel Community Development Service. As I notice above, our first speaker is the director of the ACDS. Now in semi-retirement, Ardith works on nonprofit boards with an emphasis on education, in addition to being a member of Women Giving Together Education Committee. Ardith, take it away.
Good evening and welcome to each of you here today, and thank you for your interest in affordable housing in Anne Arundel County. What is affordable housing? No, it's not just public housing, and please never consider those two phrases to be synonymous. Affordable housing, as the term is now used, is housing that serves persons whose income is 60% of the median income or less for our region. In our area, that means that a person whose income is under 44,000 may be eligible for excuse me, here I am using wrong words, eligible for affordable housing. And for a family of three, we're talking about a family of an income of 63,000. Just a moment of history. In the 1930s, Congress established public housing. This was financed by the federal government and owned and managed by local housing authorities. In the 70s, the rental voucher or Section 8 certificate was established, providing cash to be applied toward rent. In the mid-80s, the federal government established the Low-Income Housing Tax Credit, a way to bring private investors into housing production. It's this tool that's the main source for affordable housing production today. So today, housing for families of limited income becomes affordable primarily through financing mechanisms that reduce the debt on the construction of the building enough that the rents can be kept lower than market rate rents, or through direct subsidy payments to fill the gap between a person's affordability level and their rent, or even through a combination of these two. Let me assure you, affordable housing comes in many, many forms. Yes, public housing, which is currently changing substantially. There's some small home ownership programs and rehabilitation programs. There are homes for special needs populations that are supported by state and federal grants. There are efforts like Habitat for Humanity. There are living units rented with support of a cash subsidy. But most importantly, they are apartment complexes for senior citizens or for families, built and owned by private or nonprofit developers, financed by a combination of federal low-income housing tax credits, private investment, state grants such as our Rental Housing Works, or loans through multiple housing programs. We'll be discussing a number of these affordability programs today, but looking to the future, the significant growth in production is expected to come from the private and nonprofit developers using public-private partnerships to create or rehabilitate housing which blends into our communities. Here in Anne Arundel, we already have about 25 such communities scattered from Annapolis to Glen Burnie, Edgewater, Odenton, and Severna Park. If you drive by these facilities, I don't think you would say, oh, that must be affordable housing. No, these are apartment communities that meet all zoning and building codes and are easily mistaken for more expensive complexes. These buildings provide normal amenities and professional management. The owners pay property taxes. The tenants make defined rent payments. They're modern apartment units which serve with dignity our neighbors who have only limited income due to age, disability, or lower paying jobs. The Anne Arundel County Affordable Housing Coalition, which is now chaired by Trudy McFall, has published The New Faces of Affordable Housing, a valuable presentation about these units, which you may wish to access and share with others. They've also produced a short video, which we're going to share with you now. Affordable Housing Matters. Take away for the video.
Trying to find affordable housing today is almost impossible.
It was way more than I could afford.
We deserve to live a decent life, regardless of our age.
We're struggling to make a living when we're just trying to make a life.
These are people just like you and I that are working hard every day and that are trying to make a difference for themselves, their employers, and their families.
We're creating homes for people, and we're creating homes for people in all income strata. Affordable housing is tremendously in need in this area, especially when you're looking at Baltimore and Washington. If you've got a two-person household, both of them are working and they're earning minimum wage. They're in between 30 and 50% incomes, and there aren't many apartment communities that offer rents in that range.
Sometimes you don't see the benefit of working hard and you can't seem to make the ends meet.
Our rents range from about $500 to $1,200. That's for a single person household before utilities. There's tremendous misconceptions about affordable housing. Affordable housing is a place where people that are working can afford to live.
Everybody in this community works. It's not just given to you.
We do a credit check on every resident, we do a criminal background check on every resident, and we do a landlord verification on every resident.
I work at Johns Hopkins. I'm a medical assistant.
I work full-time at JCPenney's as a supervisor.
I work for my father's company. It's Cole's Construction Remodeling.
We want to make sure that the residents we're bringing into our community, one, are going to pay their rent, and two, are going to be good neighbors.
We love it out here. My two youngest ones, they come from elementary school, which is right next door. They can go over to the homework club where they help them with homework. Anything that I need taken care of, I can just call and someone will come and fix any problem that we have.
We take great pride in our communities. So we feel they're managed very well. We take a lot of pride in that and how they look, and that our residents have a wonderful place to live. We're also answering to investors who are coming to look at the communities at least once a year. So they're inspected quite often from an investor and lender standpoint, and we do our own inspections as well.
These places are very nice, and I wouldn't have been able to obtain that without affordable housing. I've seen us grow as a community together. I can ask my neighbor for a cup of sugar, like what it was when I was growing up. We're raising families. The kids coming up behind us, they need the opportunity to feel safe, to have a home.
It's an excellent idea for the state to provide funding for affordable housing developments. There are plenty of people out there that would be able to take advantage of affordable housing if more units were available. I know that the piece that the state provides is only a small piece, but it's a necessary piece that you can leverage the other financing from. The state has a small portion of it, you can end up with the final project.
It's just not solely a private sector initiative. It's not solely just a public sector responsibility. It's going to have to take the public and the private sector working together on this.
It's really about stimulating the economy. We're talking about construction jobs, architectural firms. We're talking about civil engineering firms, accounting firms, legal firms.
You're seeing people work. You see the new homes behind me. This area has grown. It's a vibrant community, starting to take new life.
That's just fantastic to see, the wrecking ball come and it knock down that old, dilapidated building. In 12 months, we're going to see something brand new for a well-deserving family or elderly person.
The whole concept behind economic development is to attract, retain businesses to the area and help businesses grow and expand. Here in the state of Maryland, over 80% of the businesses are small businesses. And if we don't have the workforce that can support that and a workforce that can live close by to those businesses, then it's increasingly more difficult for those business owners to be competitive.
The commute's better. My job is only 10 minutes away. It's a great location, great area.
The opportunity exists for the business to not only attract good employees, but employees that are productive and employees that will probably stay.
I was walking through the warehouse and one of our employees jumped off his forklift and came and gave me a big hug. He was so excited to move into a brand new townhouse with good schools close by, plus close to our plant.
Affordable housing means
I can pay my rent with the rest of my bills.
better quality of life.
I've made so many friends that I wouldn't want to move out.
It's awesome. My life has totally changed. My desire is to own this house and pass it down to my girls. That's my desire.
When people are in this bracket and they have some stability, it's a lot more confidence. It's very warm to us. We make meals together. We hang family pictures. I mean, we have dinner parties. As a single mother, as a part-time worker, it wouldn't be possible. The numbers don't add up.
It truly changes these people's lives.
Affordable housing matters.
And thank you.
And thank you so much for that presentation from the Anne Arundel County Affordable Housing Coalition. Our first speaker now is known to many of you for the very important role she carries out as the Executive Director of ACDS, Arundel Community Development Services, Inc. This organization serves both as a housing developer of projects such as Bates Center and as administrator of many countywide funding programs, which serve the county's low and moderate income residents and communities. She took leadership of ACDS at its inception and has shepherded it from a budget of $3 million to now over $20 million. Kathy's also been active in the state legislative process. Recently, she's helped with the implementation of County Executive Pittman's many significant housing initiatives. Kathy's bachelor's and master's degrees are from the University of New York at Buffalo, with additional work at the Harvard Kennedy Center. Kathy, take it away.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Good to see you all. And thank you, Ardith. Next slide, please. I'm Kathy Koch, the Executive Director, as Ardith has said, for Arundel Community Development Services, affectionately referred to as ACDS. ACDS is a nonprofit organization that's under contract with Anne Arundel County to do all of its housing and community development. Prior to July of 1993, we were part of county government. I like to say that we were one of the chosen ones to be privatized at that time. Probably the only place in the country really these programs are really done in this type of organization. So, but it works, and it works really well, I think. As Ardith has said, we started out many years ago spending about $3 million. Our normal expenditures are between 10 to 12 million. And with this last year, with all the work that we've been doing in response to COVID, we're going to be probably up to 26 million. Next slide. Okay, this slide is kind of shows you just in one picture all the different, what I'm going to do tonight is kind of talk about the programs that we have in place and what we are doing for affordable housing, and then kind of end with some of the newer initiatives, especially under the Stuart Pittman administration, our current county executive, that I'm very proud and excited to be working for at this point in time. So, but before I go into talking about some of these programs, I'm just going to throw some numbers out at you just to kind of tell you what the need is and kind of paint a picture there. So one of the things we always look at is to see how many people are paying more than 50% of their income toward their housing expenses. Because one of the things, if you're paying more than 50% towards your housing expenses, the chances of some kind of crisis or some extra expenses creating maybe moving you toward homelessness are increased. So in Anne Arundel County, currently 21% of all rental households earning 80% or more of the area median income pay more than 50% of their income toward housing. In home ownership, in our home ownership units, 11,385 homeowners at 80% and below pay more than 50% of their income toward their housing cost. Another number, just to throw another number at you, a recent market study showed that we are, for people earning 50% or less of the median income, we are short by 8,923 units. As of March 2021, the Anne Arundel County Housing Commission had over 23,500 people, households on their waiting list, whether for public housing, housing choice vouchers, or other assistance for affordable housing. So that kind of paints the need for you. This slide shows you all the different programs. And what we do at ACDS is that we administer these programs, and with federal dollars, state dollars, and county dollars that are available to put these programs in place. Next slide. I'm going to start by just quickly going over, kind of going to go over my New York speed, some of the programs that we have available. Starting with home ownership. With home ownership, one of the important things is to be able to keep people in the housing that they are in. So we have a very active foreclosure prevention counseling program. These counseling programs are headed up by HUD certified counselors in our agency. And again, they're skilled in negotiating with the banks and trying to restructure loans and also helping people figure out exactly what they need to be able to make their payments on their housing. We also have a very active housing counseling program. And this is a program where we teach people what it means to own a home, help them figure out whether they have the income to get into a house and what they need to do, and help them put together a package so that they can go to a bank to be able to get a mortgage. But most importantly, what this program does is that it's credit, credit, credit. We do a whole lot of credit counseling, helping people to get their credit in order so that they can take advantage of a mortgage in order to get into their first house, one of the biggest purchases we all make in our life. And in that program, we have over about 500 people a year coming through that program. Then to complement that, we have a mortgage assistance program, which is a closing costs and down payment assistance program. And as you all probably remember, when many of you bought your first house, that $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 that you had to come up with to get into the house is often, it's very difficult to come up with those funds. So this program actually provides those dollars up to $30,000 to help people get into their first house. Next slide. We also, besides helping people stay in their houses and get into home ownership, we also have a very active property rehab program. And again, this is a program where we're helping to stabilize the existing supply of affordable housing and helping people stay in their homes. And again, we're servicing people at 60% and below the median income. And what we do with this program is we put together loans and grants, federal, state, and local funds to figure out exactly what the people are eligible, how much work they need to get done on their house. And we do probably about 40 houses a year. And I think the beauty of this program is that we have construction staff. Not only do we have the financial people who figure out exactly what you're eligible for, but we also have construction staff who help you figure out exactly what needs to be done to your home to bring it up to code, and also helps you hire a contractor and also manage that contractor. And everybody knows how complicated that can be if you've ever been through a housing rehab process yourself. Okay, I'm going to quickly just go on to the next slide. We also, so not only there's a piece where we focus on home ownership, we also, of course, one of our largest needs is for more affordable rental units. This is a program, our acquisition rehab program, again, where we're using state and federal dollars. And this is not only a program where we are buying up units, fixing up units, and providing quality, affordable rentals, but we also, we are a housing and community development agency. So this is also part of our community revitalization efforts up in the Brooklyn Park area. And again, where we purchase the units and make major renovations to them and then make them available as affordable rental units. Okay, next slide. Artist talked a little bit in the video. You saw a little bit about the creating and stabilizing our existing supply of large rental complexes. And this is something else we do. We provide funding for to make that happen. And I think Ardith mentioned that we have probably about 25 complexes across the county, and we help to make those developments possible. And these are 2 projects we just finished. Congratulations to our housing authority that just settled on Newtown 20, and Brockbridge Landing is a 38 affordable unit that's out in the Jessup community. Next slide. The next slide, what I do here, again, Ardith talked a little bit about what it takes to put all the financing together. And I always say this is my Affordable Housing 101 slide. And just to show you, just like when you go to a bank to buy a house, how much mortgage you can get is based on what your income is. So it's the same thing with rental housing. If you look at the first line, you have a market rate development compared to an affordable housing development. And if you're restricting the rents that people can charge, it's logical that you get less income in. So if you look at the market rate one, you see the amount of income that development is able to produce, and then you see what an affordable housing. And what that translates into is how much they can borrow from the bank then. So if you look at the one project, it's over $8 million, while the affordable housing project can only borrow $2.7 million. If you go to our next slide, you'll see that, and this is again another project, but this both the market rate project and the affordable housing projects cost the same to build. This project is a little over $14 million project. And but they could only afford, the bank would only underwrite it and only provide a little over $3 million. So what you have to do is you have to come up with the other sources of financing. And this is what we call our alphabet soup. And it shows you how complicated and difficult it is to fill that gap. As Ardith mentioned, one of the larger tools out there to produce affordable rental units right now is our low-income housing tax credits. And it's basically a tax credit that is sold to an investor who then makes puts equity into the project, to helping to fill the gap and helping to make that project affordable to the developer to build. As you can see, there's all different types. And you can see that this is almost a $15 million project, and we're providing $750,000 into the deal, but it's that last little piece that helps to make the project affordable and helps it to move forward. Okay, next slide. We also provide the affordable housing is another spectrum of it is housing for our special needs population. And we here in Anne Arundel County are very, very fortunate. We have a lot of nonprofit organizations, Bella McCree, Arundel Lodge, all different types of nonprofit organizations that provide housing for the special needs population. We work very closely with them, providing low interest loans and grants to them to help them fix up homes or purchase new homes and expand the supply. We also have a tenant-based rental assistance program that's actually funded through HUD, and it provides housing for people with AIDS. Okay, I'm going to really go quickly through the next couple of slides. So the next slide, we also provide making sure that we have all the pieces in place to service the homeless. And if you, we make sure that we have services to support the homeless, to prevent homelessness. And the next slide, if you see, we have our 2 emergency shelters. So we make sure there's a continuum of care to take somebody from living on the streets into independence. So we have our 2 emergency shelters. We then, to the next slide, you'll see that we have transitional housing. And then to the next slide, we move into permanent housing and housing to get people into permanent housing with supportive services. And we have different programs through rapid rehousing and tenant-based rental assistance to help make that happen. Okay, I'm going to go quickly through the next one. COVID, just to tell people we are responding to the needs for what has happened in our community due to COVID. And this is our rental assistance program. We're doing an eviction prevention program. We've served close to 3,000 people already, and we're working very hard to keep everybody housed due to loss of income due to COVID. The next slide, in addition to providing eviction prevention, we're also providing in-house legal counsel, in addition to hiring community legal services, who's providing in-court assistance to help people so that if they do get to the court system, we can help them get into our programs and prevent eviction. Really quickly, the next slide shows you that we are also working on homeowners to figure out how to help homeowners because they also have been affected by loss of income due to COVID. And the last slide is just to show you that we are also doing things for the homeless population as we went through the COVID crisis in the last year. Okay, I'm going to go to the next slide. This is going forward. This is some of the programs that we have put in place due to under the Stuart Pittman administration. And I'm very proud and excited to be working at this time in affordable housing with a very supportive administration. I'm going to go through each one of these. One of the first things, next slide, was one of the first things that we were able to do with our with the county executive support and also with our council members is that fair housing legislation was passed. We were one of the last jurisdictions in the region to pass a fair housing legislation. And I think it's not only important that we passed the fair housing legislation, but we also codified our Human Relations Commission to make sure that we have the enforcement tools available also. Next one. As we talked about what it takes to do affordable housing, I always say affordable housing is not rocket science. It takes land and it takes money. And one of the things that the council has been very supportive is payment in lieu of taxes. And this is where we reduce the property taxes to reduce the operating expenses for our rental complexes. And also this county administration has increased. We had about $1 million a year in federal dollars. And for the first time in the last couple of years, we also have $1 million in county funds to leverage those funds to help those rental projects happen. Next slide. One of the big things that this administration has also done is looked at ways to provide land use incentives. And this was legislation that was passed last year, workforce housing legislation. And what it does is it allows 22 units per acre, which reduces the return on the piece of land, and various zones, such as in residential zones, commercial zones, light industrial, and in mixed use zones. In return for the increase in density, the developer must provide 60% as affordable and as rental, and 40% of the units as affordable for homeownership. So, and this has been very impactful. The next piece, one of the biggest stumbling blocks to building new affordable housing in this county is adequate facilities of school capacity. And there's a lot of districts within Anne Arundel County that school capacity is closed down right now. And what this legislation did, it just tweaked that requirement with a lot of restrictions, 50 units or less, but it allows these projects that are affordable to move forward, just allowing them. Now you have to be at 95% of capacity. It lets you go up to 97, 98% capacity. And the next coming soon, next slide, this shows you the stuff that we're still working on to try and increase affordable housing, a housing trust fund. One of the first things that had to be done was we had to pass state enabling legislation. It was passed, but with a very sad heart, I tell you that the legislation was passed. However, it was vetoed by our governor. So we're going to have to come back again next year to try and get that state enabling legislation passed, which allows our county council, should it choose, to set up to place an additional small tax on the transfer of property over $1 million that would go into a dedicated fund for affordable housing. And the last thing that we're also working on, the county execs, is the moderately placed dwelling units. Okay, does this work? Does these types of incentives work? And they do work. Previous to these incentives in this administration, we were lucky if we saw one project a year applying for low-income housing tax credits. This year it went up to 9. And if you go to the next slide, I'll show you that 3 of the projects did receive tax credits. One project is going to go forward with another type of tax credits. And because of the new policies and land use incentives, we hope if we can get a building permit and get through site plan review, that we'll be producing a new 360 units in the next couple of years. So that's it at my New York speed, and happy to answer questions as we go forward. Thank you.
Well, Kathy, it's overwhelming to hear all that you and your staff have accomplished and are working on a daily basis. And I think it's excellent that this is being recorded so people can watch it again, to walk through more slowly and repeatedly the many options that your organization provides to help people get into affordable housing. You talk about people, you give them loans. Who pays back any of your loans, or do they get paid back, or are they really grants, or is it lots and lots of different kinds of things?
It's lots and lots of different kinds of things. So with our large multifamily projects, the loans are structured in such a way, they're called cash flow loans. If the project is succeeding and has cash flow available, they do pay us back. And what we've been so successful in being able to recycle the funds so that we've increased the federal dollars, but with program income coming back into the program and being able to be used again and do additional projects. So yes.
Okay, well, Kathy, with all that's going on the eviction and so forth, what programs are available to landlords, both for-profit and nonprofit, who provide affordable rental housing during eviction moratorium? They need to pay their bills too.
So the eviction prevention program, if you get this couple slides back, we've gotten in this county in federal dollars close to $35 million available to help people pay rents in the arrears and rents going forward. So I do say that the program we're running is a program about keeping people housed. It's not necessarily about keeping landlords whole, but that's in fact what it does. So people are encouraged to apply for those funds. And like I said, we're close. We've paid over 3,000 payments out to landlords. We are paying arrears and going forward because people still have not gone back to work. And we're paying 3 months at a time going forward. So helping people stay in those units. And what we're telling the landlords is that please don't evict. If they are evicted, they're not eligible. But if you still have them in those units, that you are eligible for that funding.
Thank you. Also, you mentioned, or I mentioned, the Rental Housing Works program that both of us worked on with the legislature over time, along with a lot of other people, to get that big state program established. Tell us a little about that, and how does a developer try to get qualify for funds from that program?
It's very complicated and it's very competitive. So if you remember the slide I showed that shows you how much it costs to do a multifamily project, and again, $15 million, it's probably 30 to 40 million nowadays. And so it takes a whole lot of sources to get that done. And so all the developers who are building new or renovating large projects have to go to the state first for those fundings and apply for that low-income housing tax credits, whether 9% or 4%, in order to make the project feasible. And that's a very competitive process. On the 9% projects, the state is probably only able to fund 40% of the applications that they do receive. So you got to be able to come in with a good project. And that's why our land use policies are also very, very important, because they make the projects more competitive as they apply to the state. And the developers, you have to really know, you have to pretty much know what you're doing in affordable housing. And it's not just any developer who's doing that.
No, and it's both small developers and large. I know some agencies, some of the small nonprofits work very hard and maybe have to pull together maybe almost 10 funding sources to get some of their projects going. That was true of our Episcopal Housing Corporation that I was involved with in Baltimore. But you talk about ACDS, and are your programs available to people in Annapolis as well as in the city, as in the county, or does the city have its own programs?
That, as Teresa will say, who I think is our next speaker, she runs some of the programs that are specifically tailored toward the city of Annapolis, but there's a lot of our programs that are available, and because as you know, Annapolis is part of our county. So our multifamily projects, we've done, as I showed you, the Newtown 20 was our latest project that we financed. So we do, and we financed a lot of a large number of projects in the city of Annapolis. In addition to our mortgage assistance, our closing costs and down payment assistance program is available in the city, and also home ownership and foreclosure counseling.
Okay, thank you, Kathy. We'll be coming back and you'll join us near the end when all of our speakers are available. But we thank you very much, and we don't know how you sleep with all the work that you're doing. And so we thank you very much. And now our next speaker is Teresa Wellman. Teresa is, I'm sorry, my paper had gone away. Teresa came to her current position as Annapolis City Development Administrator after several years at the State Department of Housing and Community Development in their Neighborhood Revitalization Division. Teresa's master's degree is from the Kennedy School at Harvard. And for the last 24 years, she has served the city's Department of Planning and Zoning as the Chief of Community Development. She administers the Community Development Block Grant Program, Clay Street Revitalization, and the city's Moderately Priced Dwelling Unit Program. Teresa, take it away. Teresa, you're.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here. I would just like to reiterate what Kathy said is the majority of her programs that she just talked about are open to the residents of the city of Annapolis. And the city is very appreciative of that, of ACDS and her nonprofit partners that provide services to the city. I'm Chief of Community Development for the city of Annapolis and oversee several programs. The first is the Community Development Block Grant Program, which we receive. We're really grateful for our $300,000 that we got this year. This program is a federal program from HUD. We get it every year, and what we do with the money is we provide awards to various nonprofit organizations that provide all kinds of services to low and moderate income residents. We provide help projects to the Housing Authority, Arundel Lodge, Center of Help, OIC, many of our different various nonprofits, and we also use our funds to run our property rehab program. Kathy mentioned the counties. They also run ours beautifully, and this allows people to remain, people that are at 60% or below owner occupants, to remain in their homes. We also oversee the Moderately Priced Dwelling Unit Program. Basically, this is a program that requires any developers of property that has 10 or more units to provide 15% of those units, whether it's a rental project or a for sale project, provide those at an affordable sales price. And this program, the maximum people whose income is 100% of median and below are eligible for this program. That would be people with incomes around $99,000 and below. This is sort of our in the middle group. We have implemented the Clay Street Revitalization Plan, which is the, I'm sorry, next slide. Okay. We have implemented the Clay Street Revitalization Plan, which has actually improved the majority of the public and private housing in the neighborhood through all these different programs that Kathy mentioned. and also owner occupied. We also were able to create a number of home ownership units in the neighborhood with working with the Habitat for Humanity and Homes for America. We also oversee the Housing Assistance Trust Fund. This fund was funded with monies from the MPDU program and provides settlement expense help and also helps fund our rehab for our property rehab program. Next slide. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Annapolis's affordable housing and housing in general. So the city has about 52% of the city's is owner occupied housing and 48% is renter occupied, which is basically what you see in urban areas. One thing that's of interest is 2% of the total housing units in the Baltimore region. The city has 2% of the total housing units in the Baltimore region, but it also has 8% of the assisted rental housing in the region, which means we're doing a pretty good job of providing assisted housing. We have 2,100 multifamily rentals in the city, and of those, 42% are subsidized. 62% are low-income housing tax credit units or HUD Section 8 units, 37% are public housing units, and 1% are moderately priced dwelling units. Next slide. Thank you. We also have, in terms of affordability in the city, what we call scattered site apartments that are occupied by families that have housing choice vouchers. We've also created a number of home ownership units over the years working with Habitat for Humanity and Homes for America. And we also have something called lease purchase housing, which is Homes at the Glen. It's a tax credit project, but after 15 years, after 15 years of renting, people are able to buy them, and we're working on that right now. Next slide, please. So these are our current practices for rental and home ownership to increase and stabilize affordable housing in the city of Annapolis. There's a number of different ways to do it. Of course, we talked about rehabilitating existing units, something called adaptive reuse, which ACDS did with the Bates School, acquisition rehab, where we purchase the house, fix it up, and then sell it to a lower moderate income homeowner. Of course, our moderately priced dwelling unit program, just a number of different ways that we use to increase and stabilize our affordable housing. We also have payment in lieu of taxes. We have our Housing Assistance Trust Fund, and we also have something called source of income protection, which our fair housing law says that if landlords cannot refuse to rent to you if you're going to use like your Section 8 certificate or some sort of government voucher. Next slide. So our current activity and what we're doing in Annapolis to make sure that we continue providing more affordable housing is we had an affordable housing task force. That group has been meeting over the last several months, and we expect them to provide ideas on how to keep and continue providing affordable housing in the city. They're going to be making a presentation to the City Council on June 17th. So check out the city's website and you can see what the Affordable Housing Task Force is recommending. We also have a new Affordable Housing and Community Equity Development Commission, and this commission is going to be basically trying to carry out what's recommended by the task force. And then we have our Housing and Human Welfare Standing Committee, which is aldermen that oversee the projects. Next slide, please. Again, like I said, we partner with nonprofit affordable housing developers. We've done for home ownership units, we've done 51 homeownership units with Habitat, 47 units with Homes for America, and Homes at the Glen, 56 lease purchase. Next slide, please. This is all the funding that Kathy talked about. I'm not going to go over it, just so you know what it is. Next slide, please. So these are all the affordable housing developments in the city of Annapolis. I think if I'm going to show you what they look like so you can see how really nice our affordable housing looks in the city. Next slide, please. Upcoming, I'm sure Melissa's going to talk about the renovations and changes that the Housing Authority is going to make. And right now we have Town Courts, which is 42 units of subsidized rental housing that's going up over by the Monarch School, the Willows, which is 58 units of subsidized rental housing that will be going up on Forest Drive. And then we have Parkside Preserve. These are 19 for sale MPDU units. Next slide, please. So far, we have produced in our moderately priced dwelling unit program 18 rental units at Bell Annapolis at West and 10 home ownership units. Next slide, please. So these are, I'm just going to roll through these. This is what the new affordable housing looks like. You can see that the before and after pictures. This is Annapolis Gardens. Next slide. Admiral Oaks. Bay Forest Senior Apartments. Bowman Place, which was recently redone, beautiful. College Creek Terrace, which was public housing. Homes at the Glen, which is the lease purchase program. Homes at Monument, again, just recently done. O'Berry Court and Bates Senior Housing, all done in Annapolis and with the help of the county and Arundel Community Development Services. Next slide, please. This is Bowman Commons, which we just did at 6 Veteran Rental, Section 8. It was just done in the Clay Street neighborhood. Habitat, this is a Habitat for Humanity project, which is home ownership on Clay Street. Another Habitat project. And another, this was 10 units that was developed on the site of Old Public Housing. And another project by one by Homes for America. And these are our moderately priced dwelling units. This is Town Courts, which is coming up. And the next is the Willows, which is coming up. So this is what affordable housing looks like in Annapolis. For additional information, you can go on our website and or you can always call me. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. I think you who are watching this and listening probably are a bit overwhelmed right now by all that is going on. And again, we are taping this so that you can watch it again. And we can give you the websites both of all 3 of the agencies so that they can you can do your own research. Teresa, how does we think of many people think of Annapolis as its historic district, and how does the city's historic district and the current zoning impact the city's ability to provide affordable housing?
Well, having a historic district doesn't really impact the future of the city's affordable housing. I mean, the historic district is a small area around the downtown area with commercial and single family, multifamily residences and governmental agencies. And generally, development in the historic district is subject to many restrictions, which makes property more expensive. But yet, the historic district is helped make Annapolis a successful city and a desirable place to live. However, that doesn't mean that having affordable housing in the historic district is impossible. The Housing Authority owns Bloomsbury Square, which is a lovely development right next to St. John's College. And Homes for America recently renovated Bowman Place, which is just on the other side of the border of the historic district. So also the city's exploring the feasibility of encouraging affordable housing on second floors, for businesses to put affordable housing on the second floors of their property. So there are opportunities for affordable housing in the historic district. With regards to current zoning has more of an impact on affordable housing in the city. The first guiding principle in the city's comprehensive plan is housing affordability, and that is to expand the range of housing choices that are accessible both in terms of geography, affordability, and are responsive to the needs of renters and owners of low to middle income. So through our comprehensive planning process, we are looking at ways to change the current zoning to allow for the construction of more affordable housing. For example, a lot of the residential zoning in the city's single family zoning, or it's multifamily. It doesn't allow for a lot of duplexes or triplexes or quadruplex housing, which by nature would be more affordable. These are kind of the types of construction which we call the missing middle. It doesn't refer to income, it refers to the type of housing, but obviously they're more affordable. I'm from upstate New York, just like Kathy, and in upstate New York, you'll see a lot of housing that we call double-decker or triple-decker housing, where there's like two flats, one on top of the other. And usually, like in my town, it was a multi-generational housing. The grandparents lived on the first floor, and then one of the children with their children lived on the second floor. You really don't see that type of construction here. So again, the city's addressing affordable housing through its comprehensive planning process, and is looking at possibly changing to the zoning to allow for more of these types of this type of housing.
If members of the Women Giving Together want to get more involved, say in the task force or the housing commission, can they do that? Can they attend meetings? What might you suggest about that?
Well, the task force is completed now, and they'll be making their recommendations at that work session on the 17th. But the Affordable Housing Commission, the new Affordable Housing Commission, actually has a vacancy. So, and they do have meetings on the fourth Thursday of every month. So you can always go on the city's website and watch the meetings. You can participate in the meetings, and you can also, if you want to be a member of the commission, like I said, I think we have one more vacancy. You can get in touch with me, and I will give you, or you can go on the city's website under boards and commissions and see how you go and apply for that vacancy.
Okay, thank you very much, Teresa. This has been very interesting and very helpful to see so much going on in the city of Annapolis in the world of affordable housing.
Thank you.
And our final panelist then tonight is Melissa Maddox Evans, the Executive Director and CEO of HACA, which is an acronym for the Housing Authority of the City of Annapolis. Melissa earned her law degree from the University of Georgia and her undergraduate degree from Georgetown. She brings Annapolis a very rich background of significant housing and community work from her work in Charleston, South Carolina. There, besides serving as their Housing Authority Counsel and then Executive Director, she was the CDO of the Housing and Redevelopment Authority there. She was also instrumental in forming the Social Justice Racial Equity Collaborative of Charleston. Earlier in her career, Melissa worked on intervention programs for developmentally delayed children. She has expertise and is nationally known speaker on affordable housing, fair housing, and nonprofit governance. We're happy to have Melissa here in Annapolis, managing the difficult position of CEO of the Housing Authority. Melissa, take it away.
Thank you, Ardith, and thank you so much for inviting me today. And it was very encouraging to hear all of the great work that Kathy talked about for ACDS and Teresa at the city. It's great to just hear what they're doing because we get a chance to partner with them. And it's just very awesome to be in partnership with them to see these possibilities happen. So I provided a presentation that is on the resource page to give background information on our housing authority, but I wanted to take this opportunity just to share and elaborate a little bit about actually what we do with the housing authority. Because although a lot of people hear a lot about the housing authority, they may not really know exactly what is it that we do at the agency. So I wanted to provide some background information. Our housing authority is created by statute, enabling statute for the city of Annapolis. And we're governed by a 7-member board that is appointed by city council. And we always have to have a resident representation on our board. We offer housing for about 1,100, a little over 1,100 families in the city of Annapolis. We have our public housing program, which offers housing to about 712 families throughout the city of Annapolis in different housing complexes. We have the Housing Choice Voucher Program, which provides vouchers to about 384 families in the city of Annapolis and in surrounding areas. We also have mixed finance properties at Annapolis Gardens and Oakbury Court that serve about 145 families. So we have a variety of housing options that we provide, and those housing opportunities there have both public housing, housing choice voucher, and tax credit housings. In order to qualify for our programs, a person, their household income must be anywhere between 30% and 80% of the area median income. And so those are our income qualification standards. And in order to what HUD considers as affordable in terms of rent, a person should not be paying any more than 30% of their income towards rent. And so our programs are primarily income-based. So if someone's household's family, their income goes down, then their rent contribution would actually increase. Conversely, if their income increases, their rent contribution increases. Our housing authority has a budget of about $13 million, primarily federal funds. But primarily, one thing that people may not be aware of when it comes to funding for housing authorities is that we rarely receive full allocation for our need. And so what I mean is this, like, for example, for the public housing program, we usually receive maybe somewhere between 83 to 90% of our allocated need. For the Housing Choice Voucher Program, we receive probably about 77 to 85% of what our need is. So how that translates in terms of operations is that, for example, for every dollar we may need, we might only receive 83 cents on that dollar. And so housing authorities are rarely provided 100% allocated need as far as funding is concerned, which means year after year, what happens is that the need, as far as the gap that we see in our funding sources in comparison to the need we have to maintain the properties, can increase year after year. So it's very crucial that housing authorities embark on initiatives that enable them to diversify their portfolios and not just remain in the traditional federally funded public housing programs or housing choice voucher programs to survive. We also have a capital fund budget of about $2 million. But just to also illustrate the gap between the funding that we're allocated, we probably need a little bit more close to $4 million in order to address our capital improvement needs. So as you can see, once again, for capital improvement needs, there's a significant gap with what we receive funding wise and with what the actual needs are. And you would think, well, okay, how do you manage the programs? Well, it's very challenging. The challenges in the traditional public housing program is that housing authorities are not allowed under HUD rules to leverage their programs or their properties. So housing authorities own properties under traditional public housing programs with HUD. So although we may own the property and we may own the land, we can't leverage it in any way. And so we don't retain any of the equity. We are only allowed to manage the properties with the funding that HUD gives us. And so entering into new development arrangements allows us to have more financial flexibility. So you can imagine if let's say you owned your home, which I'm sure many of you are homeowners, but you weren't allowed to have the benefit of any of the equity. You weren't allowed to refinance if you needed to, or take out a loan against the equity in your home to deal with your home, the issues that you may have, how challenging that might be. And on a much broader level, that's the challenge that housing authorities have. We literally have to make $1 out of 15 cents when we manage our programs. And so as you can see, year after year, what happens? Housing authorities have experienced nationwide, and not just in Annapolis, is that to date, there is about a $70 billion worth of backlog for capital improvement needs for public housing properties. So that's a significant amount of money that will be difficult, if not impossible, to recoup purely from federal resources. So at about 2012, HUD has decided that it would allow, and it did through statutory legislation, housing authorities to enter into a different program. One of the primary programs is called the Rental Assistance Demonstration Program, in which HUD then, through a housing authority going through a very in-depth application process, was allowed to apply to HUD to ask HUD to release their legal obligation on our property. So HUD, through the RAD program, releases their legal hold on housing authority property, as long as housing authorities designate the housing that they plan to redevelop or build new to affordable housing, which housing authorities are required to do that anyway by statute and by our bylaws, and we want to do that. And so that works for us. So we're now allowed to partner with private investors that are dedicated to affordable housing and enter into deals with tax credit investors and other public and private investors that enable us to receive the funding to actually address longstanding capital improvement needs that our properties have had for decades. And so you will see lots of housing authorities converting their portfolio to RAD, and that's the acronym for the Rental Assistance Demonstration Program, which really refers to a big umbrella of programs that are now available to housing authorities that enable them to keep the income restrictions and keep the properties dedicated to those that need it most. And so our housing authority is engaged in that program. We have a plan to revitalize all of our public housing properties and are actually in process, as Kathy and Teresa mentioned earlier. We have several projects going on. Our Newtown 20 project is under construction right now. That was a demolition project for 78 units, and we have broken ground on that project, and we'll be beginning construction in the next month or two. So we're very excited about that. We have a substantial rehabilitation project at Morse H. Blum, our senior development, in which we will be engaging in a tenant in place redevelopment program. So our goal is to try to keep as many residents in at that location and to relocate them within the building as we do substantial rehabilitation of those units. We are also, we want to thank both the city and ACDS for significant levels of funding to assist us with those projects. And we are also engaging now, which we're very excited about, in the Choice Neighborhood Implementation Grant Program. And we are seeking application, which we will apply next month to HUD for a neighborhood revitalization effort for the Eastport Harbor House neighborhood. We're very excited about that because those types of grants enable you to re-envision a community. So if there are amenities that are needed within a community that weren't able to be included before, for whatever reason, we can have a fresh start and re-envision what needs to be included. So let's say if they're medical facilities, if they're educational facilities, small businesses, we are allowed to do that under that grant. So that'll entail a significant amount of outreach and engagement with all local stakeholders, the general public. You'll see in the future lots of information about that. We're going to renovate our Robinwood community, which we're glad to partner also with Kathy and her organization. We're currently doing a weatherization grant there to bring HVAC and much needed electrical upgrades there, but we're going to do a very comprehensive revitalization program there as well as all of our properties. So we're excited to engage in those efforts and to see the quality of life in the homes improve for our residents. So all that I said that we're doing with a staff of about 60 that cover our operations, our development, resident programs, all sorts of aspects of our organization. And we also, as far as resident programs is concerned, we offer a very robust program. We probably have about 39, 40 partners we work with. So we provide programs for example, during the COVID, we converted our community resource centers to be virtual schools since the schools at the beginning were not open. And we were able to provide that for our students. We have job training programs. We have family self-sufficiency programs, which enable financial counseling and for persons to achieve goals that they have. We have home ownership programs. We have all sorts of programs. This summer, we do summer camps. We're excited. We're going to launch a robot STEM camp for our youth, which is going to be a very innovative. So we're very excited about that. So we always have things going on for persons and families in our community, and we're excited to continue to provide those. So redevelopment we're doing, resident programs we're doing, and we're continuing to look forward for new opportunities.
Thank you, Melissa. We've heard from three very busy ladies. And Melissa, we hear always about the long waiting lists for people to get into public housing, and we hear about mold and poor conditions. Could you tell us how long are people likely to be on the waiting list? And what is being done to keep units up to a standard that they should be for best livability?
Sure. We have an average of about 1 to 3 year wait for our housing programs. And so when we open our wait lists, we open them when we're at a point where we believe a person who actually puts an application could actually be housed between 1 to 3 years. Some housing authorities leave their wait lists open. We don't do that because we find if you do that, someone can be on that list for 5 years, for 8 years or longer. So it's best that we open our wait lists when we actually have the most availability as far as occupancy is concerned. With regards to livability conditions, the Housing Authority is in compliance with city inspections. We're in compliance with HUD inspection schedule. We conduct our own inspections. So whenever we receive a complaint about molds, we address it immediately. And so we technically do not have outstanding mold issues, despite what you might see in the
newspaper. Yes,
correct.
Yeah.
So because we are obligated to address issues within a certain time frame, and so unfortunately, sometimes we don't receive the information soon enough. So as soon as an issue is reported to us, we address it.
And again, we read about you in the newspaper, and we wonder if you could just real quickly explain the kind of lawsuits that HACA is confronting from tenants or against the city or HACA.
Well, I won't reference anything as related to the city, but as far as the housing authority, there was a lawsuit, White v. HACA lawsuit that we settled last year that had several plaintiffs in which we were able to come into an agreement with the parties, which included housing authorities' full participation in city inspection schedules and whatever state and local requirements are for housing conditions. And so we are actually engaged in a consent decree, and we are complying with the consent decree. There was another lawsuit filed that was by an individual family, and we are addressing it through our counsel. But I can assure the general public that currently we address all issues promptly. Many of the issues stemming from these lawsuits were historical from years past. And so this is the route that some persons have taken with regards to litigation, and we understand that too.
And you took on a big job when you came here, and knowing that there were a lot of controversies, but it seems that many of those have been reduced at this point. Can you just mention also that there is another housing authority in Anne Arundel County, just to clarify that?
Absolutely. There's the Anne Arundel County Housing Commission, which covers the entire county of Anne Arundel County. And we partner with them also and work alongside them. And they provide very similar services as do we, and are also engaged in rigorous redevelopment of their property. So we're really glad to partner with Cliff Martin and his team. And so you may find that there are several housing authorities within a given area, and that's because under statute, a city, a county, a state can actually enact a housing authority and form one if it believes it needs one to address the housing issues in its jurisdiction.
You may have mentioned, clarified this a little, but what other services do you provide in the housing, particularly at the Blum Senior Housing?
Well, there we have a medical clinic that we are in partnership with Anne Arundel Medical Center. So there's actually a medical clinic on the premises in the building, and we're glad to partner with them, and they will be included in the new redevelopment of the building. We have all sorts of programs from recreational. We have yoga classes during the day for our residents. They have different community events. We launched a telehealth program in which we are distributing Chromebooks to our residents so they can access doctors, medical appointments, or whatever other services and needs they have right from their homes. And so transportation is a big challenge. And so we want to help reduce some of those issues through that initiative. And we also have a very robust congregate program for residents that have additional needs with regards to services according to their disability. So we have a variety of programs for our residents. Also, we do lots of transportation needs. So even we have trips to the grocery store and other needs that we address.
Well, thank you. And I think we'll now bring in the other participants, and the four of us will have a bit of a dialogue together. And are you entering now? Yes, it's it's great to see all four of us together. And I think the first and biggest question that is probably being asked by almost every participant in this webinar is, what can I do? What can individuals do to become more involved in affordable housing, in creating and assuring that we are developing more and more affordable housing in Anne Arundel County? That's a big enough one for each of you to answer. Thank you.
Okay, do you want me to start? I'll start. Okay, one of the best thing I always say is to attend sessions such as this one, to become more knowledgeable on what's happening and what it takes to build affordable housing and what it takes to do affordable housing. And as you become more knowledgeable, you'll see different items that will come before your county council and your state delegation and your state legislators, and it's let them know how you feel and that you support. One of the big things is we do want to do a housing trust fund, and that's going to allow us to have dedicated funds for addressing the affordable housing needs. And like I said, that bill enabling legislation was vetoed by the governor. It's going to come back up again for approval next year, and then it will be before the county council. And it's going to be a heavy lift, and we're going to need all the support that we can get.
Can you tell us a little more? I mean, what is a housing trust fund?
So it's a dedicated.
Okay.
Too much time. It's a dedicated funding source. So what the enabling legislation allows the county to do is to increase the transfer tax by like 0.5% on properties over $1 million. And then that small little increase would go into this dedicated fund that would be used to increase, stabilize, and improve affordable rental and home ownership.
Thank you. Let's
go, Kathy. With regards to the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, we need your support for that, for it to get off the ground. And really any legislative effort that we have, we need as housing advocates, we're always screaming at the top of our lungs for the needs, but we really need the support of the general public for these initiatives, so they know that you all want this too.
Absolutely. And I think, keeping track of what's going on in the city by watching the city council meetings and watching the Affordable Housing Commission, because you'll know what the city's talking about in terms of what we're doing and what type of legislation we're putting forth. So just basically keeping an eye on our website and all our meetings and joining organizations. We have the Anne Arundel County Affordable Housing Coalition. That's another organization that's, keeps an eye on legislation and supports legislation. So, and all of us have websites that have all this information on it. So just keeping an eye out and supporting.
What do you think are the misconceptions that many people still have about affordable housing, and do you think maybe we've tried to lessen those tonight?
I'll start, and then Melissa, I'll let you add to me, okay? I think one of the biggest misconceptions, and we many years ago, we had a campaign to educate people about the people who need affordable housing. And I'm just going to say, when we talk about affordable housing, we're talking about your children, we're talking about your parents, we're talking about the people who wait on you at the restaurant, who do take your clothes at the dry cleaners, all the services that we need. That's who we're talking about. And we're talking about a large percent who are working. I think one of the biggest misconception is that people aren't working. They are working. They're just not making as, and I always say housing is not a topic that works on supply and demand. It just doesn't. And so that's what we're talking about. We're talking about people who need affordable housing.
Teresa?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
In addition to what Kathy said, I think one big misconception about affordable housing is what it looks like, what it physically looks like. I think a lot of people are afraid because they think when you're building affordable housing in their community, it's going to look like the old public housing and not not what it looks like now, which if you looked at the pictures is really looks like market rate housing. In fact, when College Creek Terrace came through the planning commission member said, wow, this looks better than some of the market rate housing we've reviewed. So I think one of the misconceptions is how it's going to look in the neighborhood.
Yes, essentially, if anyone or any of us are paying over 30% of your income towards your housing costs, then you actually are in the affordable housing category in terms of you would qualify. And so I think once you really turn that perspective, that really helps us understand that the majority of persons are paying, well over 50% of their monthly income towards housing costs. And so many of us are cost burdened. And so when you look at it that way, then the need for it is obvious as far as more affordable housing options is concerned.
Melissa, are there any best practices that Charleston had that could be applied here that you haven't had a chance to apply yet?
Well, fortunately, I was able to be a part of the Affordable Housing Task Force in Charleston and here. So I was able to share some of our policies that we have engaged in. We were able to develop, for example, a community land trust, which was a very exciting experience, which is doing very well and is engaged in about $10 million worth of both home ownership and rental housing opportunities. And so we're very glad for that. And locally, the city of Charleston was able to engage in a very robust affordable housing trust fund, which resulted in about $30 million of housing funds, dedicated housing funds and resources for both homeownership and rental. So I'm hoping that, and with the legislative efforts that have begun here, that we can continue to do the same here.
Thank you. The Affordable Housing Coalition has been mentioned. Can some of you tell us who can be part of that? Can people attend the meetings? Do they have to be part of the housing industry to be part of the Anne Arundel Affordable Housing Coalition?
No, you do not have to be part of the housing industry to be part of the Affordable Housing Coalition. All you have to do is want to work on the advocacy and support the goals of the coalition. There's a webpage, Anne Arundel Affordable Housing Coalition, that you can look up that gives you information and background on the organization. And we encourage you to join us in our advocacy.
Anybody else want to mention that? Well, I think we have come to exactly 6:30, and we know that you all have other things pressing upon you. We think it's very important that you've joined us here tonight, and we ask that you speak to your legislators, speak to your county councilman, your city councilman, and to particularly probably to your neighbors. It's your neighbors who probably are carrying many of these misconceptions, and that you can now spread the word about what you understand affordable housing in Anne Arundel to be. We are seeking through all these organizations to assist people at every income level and with every kind of housing need. And it's taking a lot of people, a lot of money, and a lot of energy to keep our people moving into dignified housing and living as good neighbors for us. And we want you to be part of the missionary work now that needs to be done to share what is affordable housing in Anne Arundel County. What are the components? How do I help? And what will our future be if we continue upon these programs that we have heard about today that are so important? And with that, I want to say thank you to all of you on the panel, and thank you to all of you who are participating tonight.
Thank you. What a great program. I've learned so much. To our informative speakers, Kathy Koch, Teresa Wellman, and Melissa Maddox Evans, Thanks to Ardith for her knowledge-based moderating, and to all the attendees we had here. I don't know about you, but I heard a lot of exciting and hopeful things for the future here. Once again, we thank our sponsors, and if you want to join us for future events, please visit our givingtogether.org website. Thank you and good night.